if you're doing something with a passion, it's less like work than anything. And find an industry you really like. Take a job of any kind, way, shape, sort, or form. It doesn't matter where it is, top, middle, or bottom, and learn all you can, and listen all you can, and do your best.
John, excited to have you on the FITTEAM show.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here.
Look forward to getting to know you a little bit better.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the friendship, and love to start with people. Start way back about your childhood, where you grew up, where you're from, and.
Well, I had an interesting childhood. My father was a pilot in the Air Force, so we kind of we moved around a little bit, mostly domestically, California, New Hampshire, Idaho, but we really settled when I was younger in San Antonio, Texas. So ostensibly I grew up there. We moved away for a year or two to Colorado Springs and then back to Texas. And I finished high school in San Antonio. So that was kind of my upbringing.
What hobbies did you have growing up?
I think I was like every kid. We played basketball, baseball, football. It was just kind of all American. Those were the main sports. Texas was two sports: football and spring football. I mean, it was a big influence of that. And then when I was about 11 or 12, I found a tennis racket in the garage, and I immediately went out and I hit golf balls with it, ruined the racket, but there was something about it that I liked, and so I started playing tennis. I'd go up to the high school, hit against the wall. I hit probably 2 or 3 million balls against walls growing up, and I was self-taught, and I started probably when I was 13 to play a few tournaments and travel around and get the snot beaten out of me. And back then there was just one tournament, one level. Tennis has evolved since then. There's a lot of different levels, but it was a kind of trial by fire. So I got into tennis accidentally, but I still kept playing all those other sports, probably into high school.
Did you play high school tennis?
I did. I played. We had girls and boys teams, and I played and we actually traveled to tournaments. And the particular district that I lived in San Antonio, I think we had 3 or 4 of the top high school teams in the state, which was pretty good. In Texas, it was a big state. So I played and ended up doing pretty well and good enough to get a scholarship, which was nice, to college. And so I kept going into college.
Did you expect that? Did you know that was coming, or?
It was. I think all of us as athletes have kind of a seminal moment. I think it was my senior year, right before my senior year in high school. I broke my foot, and I couldn't play tennis. So I sat for like 6 weeks, and I would go out and serve with a cast on. I'd come up to the net and hit a few volleys, but you really weren't supposed to do any of that. And then when I came back, I was hungry, really hungry. And I remember that senior year I just went on a tear. People that I'd lost to before, I was not losing to them anymore. And I had a really good senior year. It was pretty cool. And that kind of propelled me to get a few scholarship offers, and it was pretty exciting.
So you had that hunger, that burning desire. What was it that changed besides maybe that setback just lit that fire? Or?
I think you and I've been fortunate to work with a lot of really amazing athletes over time. It was hunger, it was passion. It was. I remember we would have to run before practice, and I would end up lapping my entire team because I would just push myself. And I think being out of it made me realize how much I loved it and how much I had a passion for it and how much I was kind of good at it, and I just wanted to be. I wanted to be better. I just wanted to keep making myself better.
So after high school,
I got a scholarship. I got a couple of scholarship offers, but I ended up taking a full scholarship to University of Dallas in Irving, Texas, which was a little bit of a culture shock. It was a private liberal arts Jesuit college, smaller than my high school. And I was recruited to play tennis, and I was the only American on my team. We had a couple of guys from Holland. We had a guy from France. We had a guy from India. We had kind of guys from all over the place. So it was a real interesting kind of thing. And I think college sports, especially golf and tennis back then, they recruited a lot of people from foreign countries, which was it was a great education.
So after college, what came next for you?
I tried to play a little bit professionally. I played some satellite tournaments, and back then I had a pretty good serve, and I realized once they got it back, I was kind of screwed. So I needed to find a real job. I did a few things. I worked in a bank for a year, which was the greatest education of all time, because from that moment forward, I knew I never wanted to work for anybody ever again. It was a real interesting time to know that I had done all my work and it was Thursday and I just had to sit at that desk regardless. So, yeah, it was a real it was an eye-opening thing. So from there, I actually got into tennis. Did like a lot of people did in college. I taught tennis, and I did that for a while. I did it in Texas, and then I moved to Denver, and then Chicago, and then I moved to Boston in the mid '80s, and I got a couple of jobs as director of tennis at some clubs there, and I met astonishing people. I lived in Cambridge and taught in a club in Weston, and there was a lot of just very amazing and interesting people. A lot of college professors from either Harvard or MIT. It's a big college kind of place, and there was a lot of high tech, and there were a lot of investment people, and just really interesting people. People that kind of I met and became friends with, and many I still know to this day. So that was kind of it was a great experience. And then right around 1990 or so, I got invited to an event with a bunch of tennis legends. These were players who had won Wimbledon or the U.S. Open or the French Open or the Australian Open, and I spent some time with them, and they had talked to me about kind of starting a company, because they had retired and they didn't really make a lot of money when they played. They played mostly as amateurs, because tennis was kind of amateur before 1968, so the best players in the world could play the Grand Slam tournaments but didn't get paid for them. And then there was a secondary kind of less well-known pro tour back then that the players could make money, but it was grueling and a lot of tournaments, and unless you were at the top, it was tough. So I met these guys, and I came up with a business plan, and I started a company with myself and 11 former Grand Slam tennis champions, all who had won Wimbledon or the U.S. Open or the Australian Open, the French Open. And we started a marketing company called Grand Slam Sports Marketing, and it was pretty cool. We did a lot of really amazing and interesting things early on, and it was a chance for me to work with my heroes, because these guys, they started tennis. Guys like Ken Rosewall and Roy Emerson and Cliff Drysdale and Fred Stolle. There were 11 altogether, and then in addition to our kind of core group, we worked with everybody from Billie Jean King to Virginia Wade to Aileen Nastase to Rod Laver to kind of this whole group of tennis legends. And we would do three basic things. We would do endorsements. So we would have endorsements with companies like American Airlines, the New York Times, RCA, in tennis, Head and Penn, and with Nike. And it was a real chance to give these guys something back. And we developed these programs where we'd also do a lot of corporate events for financial companies, for insurance companies, and then we would do charity events. We'd bring them in and use them as a vehicle to raise money or awareness for charities. So it was a really an amazing experience.
What came next for you after that?
Well, I mean, that was for a while, and I think the interesting thing was the people that love tennis, and so my guys knew everybody. They knew politicians, and they knew presidents, and they knew movie stars, and they knew business leaders. And with tennis, you kind of check your ego at the gate. And so we would do these amazing events and meet such interesting people from all walks of life that, I got to meet and through tennis and kind of kept in contact with. And then from there, I started a couple of more sports marketing firms. I got into golf a little bit. I helped Nike start a corporate division for their products. Did that for 4 or 5 years, and then did a couple of other sports marketing firms along the way. And we focused a little bit on tennis, a little bit on golf, and then just kind of other events, from Tour de France to we did skiing events in Colorado and Utah, and auto racing, just where we would bring and entertain clients. And that was a pretty big business, and we were mostly based in the financial community until about 2008, when the market crashed, which was which is a tough time for a lot of people, but especially for the industry I was in, because a lot of our clients were hit hard by the financial crash, and then there was a perception that if you were out having fun or doing events, it wasn't really, the rest of the economy was so bad. So a lot of resort business, a lot of event business, a lot of kind of incentive business ceased. And it was a lean couple of years for that. So, and not just me, just for the entire kind of industry as a whole, from resorts to entertainment to incentive companies. So that was tough.
Obviously, 2008 was tough. What's some other tougher experiences or challenges you faced as an entrepreneur?
Well, I think and it's a good question, because I've always been in and fortunate to be in the sports business. So we would be running these huge events, and people would come and they'd say, "What do you do for your real job?" Because we're doing sports, or we're playing tennis, or we're doing something recreating that was fun, like we would do golf. But I think that the perception is that it was just all fun, but it's still a real business, and a real business, as we all know, is that you have to make more money than you spend. You have to take care of the people that work with you and the people that work for you. You have to keep a steady pipeline of clients and events. And so I think that my experience as a tennis professional, because that's a true entrepreneur, because a lot of tennis professionals, they're out there on the court, they're teaching lessons, but that's just one aspect of what they do. They're maintaining a facility, they're dealing with teams, they're dealing with human resources, they're dealing with so many different things. So I think it was a good training for me to kind of come up through that route, to realize that no matter what you're doing, it's still a business if you're self-employed or if you're an entrepreneur.
Right. What's some accomplishments that you're most proud of?
Well, I think it was interesting, because we took a different approach, like from day one. Is that we took an event approach where we fixated on the participants and the clients, and not the athletes, and not the big shots, so to say. So we developed something what I called a cheer syndrome. We wanted to create an event where everybody knew your name. So you would come into one of our events, and the first thing we'd do is say, "Hey, Chris, have you met Steve over here? Have you met Kathy over there?" So instantly you felt part of a group, you felt included. And I think that was a huge part of our success. And it's been a huge part of the success I've had in any business, is relationship and network marketing. Right. Because I think that because the level of business I was at, it was an interesting thing. We would get a lot of our events and a lot of our business from the top down, C-level. We'd chief marketing officer, chief financial officer, CEO, president of a company, just because we were in these social situations and these event situations where we'd get to meet them. And then we would have to go into their corporate events department, and they're looking at us like, oh, the president's making me do this. And so we had to kind of sell the event twice, and we would let the corporate events people know that, listen, we're professionals, we know what we're doing, and they would learn. So we had a lot of long-standing relationships. I did events for Credit Suisse for probably 20 years. We did New York Times for a long time. And so we kept these company relationships going for a long time. And I think that one of the most satisfying things is to watch an event and to watch people having fun. And what we want to do is we want to create something where you're at an event, you don't have to ask any questions because everything's organized and everything has a timeline and everything has a purpose to it. And that's really where the companies I've been in, we've had a lot of success with, is kind of the humanistic approach. And at the end of the day, people walk away from one of our events saying, oh my God, that was a great experience, and it was uplifting, so to say.
What's some goals you have for the future?
Well, the company I have now is called Uplift Team, and we focus on team building. So really moved in the landscape from more of client-centric events where we do client entertainment, either standalone or whatever, to more employee-centric. And I think we've really come on to something that serves our clients very well. We do some corporate team building events, corporate Olympic events, and the reason they become so successful is because it's really difficult for most companies to work on employee engagement and employee retention, because retaining an employee is very costly, because having to find somebody new and hire somebody new and train somebody new. And all of these studies are showing that people are looking for recognition, they're looking for engagement, they're looking for kind of a sense of corporate community or a sense of corporate pride. And so we've developed these corporate team building events that kind of serve to that. And what's happened developing these over probably 10 or 15 years, we've come up with a formula that really works. Because in the beginning we did a lot of team building things were just sports, and people want to go out, and everybody remembers when they were in high school or college and they'd pull a hamstring, or it was very competitive and rah-rah. And it's still competitive, but what we do is we combine sedentary events with active events. So we'll do an event, we just did an event in New York a couple of months ago for an investment firm, and so we'll do an afternoon event. It'll have a timeline of about 3.5, 4 hours. And during that time, they'll have broken into teams well ahead of time. So they'll have their own team shirts and team songs, and so you're looking for this sense of teamwork within the company, but kind of an overall goal of corporate pride and competition within that. And so the activities we do combine things like volleyball, which is great. We do spaghetti marshmallow tower, where we give everybody a box of spaghetti and a bag of marshmallows, and they have to build the tallest structure they can, which is team building at its core. But also what it does is that it gives people an opportunity who aren't as physically gifted to contribute, because all the points are the same. And then we do things from like table tennis to foosball to different obstacle course. We'll do a paper airplane contest. We've done Pinewood Derby racing. And then we do that for a series of rounds. It's all set to music. There's video, there's photography. And then at the end, we do two things. One, which is dodgeball, which is, it's just it's amazing to see, because you'll see the most timid people actually do very well in it. And I think that's really what these days are, these team building days, and I've had several of my clients tell me the discoveries they make. Because what you see is, you see somebody that you may see in your office, or you walk by their office on a day in, day out basis, and you didn't know they could shoot baskets, or you didn't know they were really good at table tennis, or you didn't know they were so competitive. It's like when you see somebody sing karaoke who walks up and is very timid and meek, and then they bust out a voice that's astonishing. So our afternoon and our day is just full of these incredible discoveries. And then we finish it off with tug of war, which is epic and it's classic, and it's just you have 200 people screaming, and we get 2 teams at a time, and it's this great sense of kind of a battle and teamwork, and the photos we get from it, the videos we get from are amazing. And then after the event, they usually go to a venue and we have an award ceremony, and that's the best, because usually throughout the day there's 4 or 5 or 6 people that distinguish themselves either really well or really poorly. and so we do a little tongue-in-cheek, and then we award medals to the top 3 teams, and then we usually have a huge traveling trophy that everybody gets their name on, and that sits in the office for that whole year. And the one we just did in New York, the CEO got on the mic before the event. He said, "There's seminal moments in your life: the birth of a child, the graduation of this or that." And he said, 2 years ago, I got my name on this trophy. Everybody's screaming, and that's really the feeling we're trying to instill. And it's great to see, because each year these companies grow, and so there will be new people who've never experienced this before, coming out with a little bit of wonder and a little bit of excitement, and it's fun to kind of watch them join in. And then at the award ceremony, just the retelling of stories, and we have videos going, and we have pictures going throughout the day. So it's a really for me, it's such a gratifying business. It's bringing joy to other people. It's causing a positive kind of impact on a company. So, in answer to your question, building more of those, creating more of those, and then working on a few different things to create not only team building within a company, but team building within an industry. So kind of teams compete against each other, kind of thing. So that's kind of what's next.
Well, you've had a tremendous amount of success in tennis and in business. How does it feel to have people look up to you?
Well, I'm not. It's. I think early in my career, I really wanted that. Now it just doesn't matter to me. I think that just finding joy in what you're doing every day, finding things that make you happy, associating with people that make you happy. I've got 2 daughters. Once they're okay, my life is good. So that, I think that's the kind of thing. I think those goals and that recognition, I think all of us early in our careers really want that. And for me, I got to achieve that at a really high level, and just a lot of it was guilt by association with these amazing athletes, and spending such time with them. So I think that was a big deal for me now. But now it's just living a good day. I think that's really more important to me.
If you had a few people maybe you didn't mention that helped you become who you are today, who would you mention?
That's a really good question. I had, early on when I was just started playing tennis, I got a job basically as a court rat, cleaning up the courts, doing this when I was in San Antonio, a man named Sam Lyons, who was really nice to me. He was also an Air Force pilot, so I kind of fit right in with that. And he was very kind to me and let me work there in a place that I probably wouldn't have gotten to do that with. I think he was an influence early on. I think there's a few of the legends that I, out of the 11 that I worked with, that were amazing. Roy Emerson was just a consistent human being, and he, for the longest time, was the greatest Grand Slam champion of all time. He had 12 singles and I think 16 doubles, 28 titles altogether. But he lived with such humility and joy, and he would love bringing people out on a court and teaching them and giving them a bit of rubbish, as they say. And so I really I learned a lot from him. That here was a guy who literally was the greatest player of all time for many years. He's just out on the courts making people happy, and I think it was a real eye-opening combination for me. And then some of the other legends that I got to spend time with: Virginia Wade, a Wimbledon champion, grace and charm and kindness, and really extraordinary as a human being. John Lloyd, a good friend of mine, another English player who I still play with to this day. So there's some, and the people that I met in the industry. One of my best friends was the chairman of Fred Perry, a guy named John Wortley. And we've maintained a friendship for 25, 30 years that was born out of this. And I've had a lot of relationships like that. Another great friend, a tennis trainer, Gary Kitchell, who works like crazy, so knowledgeable, and also brings joy to people. And I think there's that's a theme with me. And we've spent some time together. And I like to smile and I like to laugh, and I think that makes things better and easier. So those were some people.
For the athletes that you've seen, what do you think it is that separates the good from the great?
Ooh, that's a great question, because through the years I would give speeches and I would try to explain how good that these guys were that I managed, and I would say, imagine being number 10 in the world in something, in anything. You're at the elite of the elite, and I said, these 11 guys would beat you 9 out of 10 times. And so I think what it was is and what I learned from them, consistency. And the great champions are consistent. The great champions are fearless. When they walk into competition, while they may have doubt, it doesn't manifest. What they think about is hitting the next great shot. And Rod Laver, to watch him play in his prime, which I got to a little on television, and then to have the great fortune of spending time with him later is, and listening to the other people. That was really the joy, is listening to these other great athletes talk about who was the best of all time, who was the one guy you'd want one match for. And I got to interview people from Pancho Gonzalez to Laver and all those, and they would just say that they were relentless, and I think that's a good word to describe in any sport. You see people like Tom Brady. You always know he's going to be there at the end. You always know that he's a great competitor. Nolan Ryan, when he was a pitcher, in baseball, he was always going to bring his best and his hardest stuff. So I think, I think just relentless consistency, and then people that like the stage, and it was a really interesting thing working with so many different personalities of these great tennis champions, because they all had different personalities, and they were all really magnificent on a big stage in their own way. Some would handle it differently and some wouldn't, but it was an amazing treat to be able to kind of soak it up like a sponge after having seen it, growing up as a child and seen it. So I think those are some really good qualities in sports and in business as well.
That was my next question: is what advice do you have for someone that's just getting started as an entrepreneur?
Well, I think as an entrepreneur is, I think the strongest skill you can have is to listen. Is we don't know everything, and we're constantly learning, and I think that the biggest thing, and I used to tell groups of kids this, and I used to do some speaking for Nike to their salespeople, is have a passion. If you're doing something with a passion, it's less like work than anything. And find an industry you really like. Take a job of any kind, way, shape, sort, or form. It doesn't matter where it is, top, middle, or bottom, and learn all you can, and listen all you can, and do your best. And I think we lose sight of that sometimes. And I think young people, we live in a very topical, and I'm making a general statement, but they want to get to the top right now. And so, and they can, because of, a lot of things that have happened in tech, and you see these internet entrepreneurs that, build a following and create an income for themselves. But for the overwhelming majority of people, it's still working hard, having a passion for something, and doing your best. And I think that's the thing that it's really hard to, if people have a job that they're not in love with, they don't do their best. And that shows. And the way you get noticed in anything is excelling and being consistent and being the best.
Awesome. Any last words?
Well, thank you for having me. What you've done is a pretty cool thing. I'm proud to have you as a friend. I don't know how you picked a ballpark to get the two World Series finalists in, but that was
Luck.
that was pretty. That was
Definitely
pretty good.
luck.
Yeah, but no, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks
and,
so much. Appreciate it.